Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I return to this today's symposium theme on magnetocaloric refrigeration, I would like to just make a few comments about, the elephant in the room here, which is the proposed draconian budget cuts to the entire laboratory system. Earlier this month, I was joined by 55 of my colleagues in sending a letter to the heads of all 7 science agencies asking about the impact of our Republican president's budget request on jobs, not only at our national laboratories, but at our universities that rely on federal funding to train the next generation of scientists. We have yet to receive any response to this, and I think that, despite the risks that have been mentioned to the morale of everyone involved, I think it's important that we look this dragon in the eye and make sure that all members of Congress who claim that they support science speak up at times when science funding is at this kind of threat. So without objection, I ask unanimous consent to submit this letter to the record.
So ordered.
Now, to get back to the fun stuff, material science, like many other disciplines, has, benefited very greatly from R&D funding. And so actually, if I return to Dr. Schwartz for a second, despite the fact that you're not part of my constituency as Dr. Terrell is, you mentioned a 40%. 40% is a rough estimate for the layoffs. When that sort of thing happens to a technical staff, if a future administration or a future Congress decided to just restore that, can you just throw a switch and immediately regrow the technical expertise that's been lost? Or is it more complicated than that?
I think it would be much more complicated than that. Scientists who either choose or are forced to leave their jobs will look for others. I don't believe that private industry is going to be able to pick up all the researchers that would become available through this budget. They would then search to change their fields. We have many researchers at Ames Laboratory and across the national laboratory system who have come from foreign countries. There would be a significant risk that many of those scientists would return to their home countries. They would take their education, their experience, all of the investment that we have placed in them, free of charge, back to their country. Right now, we are trying to extend our global leadership in materials research. I think slowing down that progress and then restarting it later would be quite a challenge.
And is maybe someone else on the panel could comment on the effect that would have on the morale of younger students coming into the field or postdocs coming into the field when they see, massive layoffs in their often very focused field of expertise. Dr. Higson?
Well, that's what my notes were actually saying. That's a very perceptive question. If you think of a lab like, say, Ames or Argonne in particularly, Argonne has some, in my area, they have some very prominent tribologists. Essentially what happens is if the tribologist is just a little known, once they are removed and someone says, hey, this particular scientist no longer has a job, then the entire community goes, what does this mean for tribology? Should we all try to head for Silicon Valley? Should we all do something with a right now implication as opposed to a long-term implication, which is what basic science has? And then the younger students, we have to give a speech to encourage them to stay the course, but yet we're uncertain as well. So definitely, even though we're in the university environment, whenever there's a cut to a prominent area or a prominent scientist, once they're removed from the equation, there are a lot of questions that we have to answer as academicians, and the students are asking about that. And the excitement and the morale definitely takes a hit.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very important thing for Congress to understand, that this is not at all like saying starting and stopping a highway construction project, that you can't just throw the switch and recover the damage that was done. And it's all right, now let's see, I have a little bit of time left, so I'm going to return to magnetocaloric refrigeration. It's my understanding that the fluid, the working fluid that's here is largely just a heat transfer fluid. There's no phase change involved, and the compressors involved are a small fraction of the total power to perform the refrigeration. Is that a correct understanding, or is it more subtle than that?
There are lots of details on how you would implement a solid state magnetic or electric or stress-induced cooling system. Our focus right now is the very, very early stages. Can we develop the materials in order to, that demonstrate, that have those large temperature change? At that point, we will turn it over to our mechanical engineering friends, who will then design the system, optimize the fluid flow, heat transfer, and others. Right now, our focus is really on creating those materials that will enable the transformation in air conditioning and refrigeration.
Yeah, and the rest of the problem, just getting the heat transfer fluid across the plates or whatever they are, is it's closer to being a solved problem and an engineering optimization. The magic is the material that you have to make work and at high efficiency, high lifetimes, all the challenges.
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, good luck. I really look forward to having refrigerators that don't rattle in the middle of the night. So,
And last much longer. Thank you for your question.
If you'll quit getting snacks out of the doors at midnight, then you won't hear that rattling. The chair now recognizes Mr. Marshall for 5 minutes.